It's nearly 8 o'clock. We can kick things off with the Irish Daily Mail here. Alexis Shock is the exclusive here by Sammy Mockbell on the Irish Daily Mail this morning. Manchester United prepared to pay half of Alexis Sanchez's mammoth £26 million salary to secure him a move this summer. United Chiefs are aware that Sanchez £500,000 a week wage, inclusive of bonuses, will prove a major stumbling block in an unbelievable show of self-awareness. Mine's a double. Alexander Lacazette scoring twice last night. Don't label me as defensive, says the former Waterford manager Derek McGrath, who might be interested in getting back involved in the game.
The Irish Times leads with Lacazette double, puts Arsenal in command. They beat Valencia 3-1 last night in the Europa League. Pedro, meanwhile, pegs back Frankfurt with precious away goal to finish 1-1 in that one. And the top story there, Messi made Klopp pay a costly price for his high-risk tactics. It's Andy Hunter saying that attacking Barca is a brave gambit, but it can also leave teams fatally exposed.
The hurl, meanwhile, will push to the end. Milner promises that Liverpool will not let standards slip.
The Irish Daily Star then goes with Strop the Rot. Van Dijk says there's no time to sulk. Meanwhile, Wes's gesture to all clubs. Wes Hoolahan is set to donate part of his testimonial funds to Shelbourne and Belvedere football clubs in a great show of benevolence. And Top Gunners is the headline in the Arsenal match last night at Alexandre Lacazette and Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang on the scoreline.
They always go the extra mile with a good photograph on the Irish Examiner of a Friday, and that's the case this morning. Is City rising? John Cotter in the hot seat as Cork begin life after John Caulfield, also runner of the Guards column in there, and much more besides.
The back page of the Sun goes with Piggy Baku, lovely doubly as Laka has final say for Gunners. Pedicure for Blues, meanwhile, as they draw with Frankfurt 1-1. And the top story here at the top of the page is Jan K.O. Fear was pants. So Maurizio Pochettino knew Jan Vertonghen was not concussed when he refused to bare his backside. An independent neurologist has confirmed the Spurs ace did not have concussion during their 1-0 Champions League semi-final loss. Vertonghen will miss the Premier League game, but Spurs were slammed for letting Vertonghen play, and Poch said, watch when he changed his shorts in the tunnel. He was a little bit worried about changing in front of everyone.
Right.
Therefore,
what do we conclude from that?
Not concussed.
Jesus. The Irish Independent this morning, Walsh Park will be a sellout for Waterford's return home, writes Martin Brennan here. This is ahead of the return of the All-Ireland Hurling Championship next Sunday week is the timeline for that, and the return of Walsh Park as well. I'm sure delighted, all the Waterford fans are delighted with that. Owen Kelly, one of the lines of this morning, writes Donegal Boylan, the Irish Independent, has been called into the answer his county's call, and he's back with Liam Sheedy as part of that team. He's going to work with some of their free takers as teams primarily, and Derek McGrath leaving the door open for an inter-county return. And Fergus McFadden's World Cup hopes hit by headbutt ban. He's out for 6 weeks, writes David Kelly.
The front page of the Racing Post goes with what a race. It's Friday, it's 5:30, and it's a crackerjack. It's the Punchestown Champion Hurdle, and you can see Super Sunday, Bouverdare, Applesjade and Mellon there, pictured on the front of the Racing Post. The back of the Racing Post is Toffees on target. Everton should continue their impressive late-season form. It's Everton against Burnley tonight at 8 o'clock.
The Times Ireland edition, meanwhile, the photograph here, as it is the case in a lot of the newspapers this morning, reflections on Arsenal's 3-1 win over Valencia in the Europa League last night. London restores pride. Like I said, on the double there, and Eintracht Frankfurt won, Chelsea won the other result. 6-week ban for McFadden, writes Gary Doyle there, and Jean Klein as well on Munster's season run-in.
The main story on the back page of The Guardian comes from Malahide. Complete disregard, Morgan rails at Hales over ban's effect on England. A bit of controversy in the England cricket camp at the moment, and Tower of Strength is their headline on Arsenal. Lacazette fires Arsenal into first leg lead over Valencia as Chelsea hit back to keep all English final on the cards.
The Irish Daily Mirror, meanwhile, late Gunners strike and it's Oba and out.
Yeah, sure is the Oba. You're not a sub-editor unless you've used Oba over at some point. Yeah. Chins Up is the other good one I've enjoyed here. David Maddock writing that Andy Robertson warning that gutted Reds to avoid Messi hangover at Toon, but that they can get it done, which was very much a tone that came up, you won't be surprised to hear, at the Aviva last night to make Liverpool fans nice and happy. Lastly for me, the front page of the Daily Telegraph sports section is Alexandre the Great. 2-goal Lacazette puts Arsenal one step closer to first European final for 13 years.
Yeah, it's a good photograph. Features in a lot of the papers. That is the back pages for you this morning. The couple of stories that we'll just come back to very briefly. The GA to begin with, Derek McGrath saying that I'm not a defensive manager, and I really don't want to be labelled that way because you're ruining my chances of getting back involved in inter-county hurling, which I want to do at some point soon. It was something that he touched on. We did a show in Dunleary a few months ago. It was off air, and it was something he touched on that night. His frustration with this constant narrative that took hold, that he was a defensive manager, he played the sweeper system, and he used that same line about, if you line up 10 good GA people in front of me here, 7 of them will tell you, oh, you're the guy who plays the sweeper. And he said, like, that's as may be, but it's not to also necessarily say that a lot of these other teams, as he says, including Limerick, they also employ some of these tactics from time to time.
Yeah, like I'm not sure is that necessarily something that will put him out of the shop window for another big job, the association with being a defensive manager. Because ultimately, if this season becomes a repeat of last year, where, granted, last year may seem like one of the most unpredictable sporting stories we've had in years, but there's no guarantee that it's not going to be a repeat of that. Limerick looked pretty good. Galway could come back as well. Like, if Limerick do back-to-back, there will be counties looking around for somebody who will give them that edge, somebody who will be able to skew things a little bit, because after last summer, hurling is great, hurling is perfect, everything is going in an attacking vein, and all the managers are playing the right way after the scourge of Derek McGrath has been gotten rid of, which is obviously one of the biggest overreactions we've seen to a manager in recent times. That being said, I'm not so sure disassociating yourself with being a defensive manager is necessarily the best thing to do, because I think there will be teams looking around for somebody who will give them that edge defensively or whatever it may be. Being a defensive manager is not what Derek McGrath is. Solidifying a defence is what Derek McGrath did with Waterford and made them contenders.
Yeah, and I think that his record speaks for itself in a lot of ways. Like Waterford, he brought Waterford from a team that maybe might be able to get there and maybe get it done to on the brink of it, obviously, a couple of times. That the final success obviously eluding him, but I do think that his record speaks for itself, and fair play to him for challenging something that he thinks is not, he's been misrepresented on, was an expression he used, which I have absolute sympathy for, that he used over the course of this piece.
So, your kindred spirits.
Kindred spirits. Owen Kelly's the other good line there from Donegal Boyle, back in with the Tipperary Hurlers. When I saw the headline, I was interested to see exactly what sort of role he's going to play, and it seems as if he is going to be working with the free takers. So obviously Liam Sheedy has looked at it and thought, Jesus, we need a bit of work here, was one of the main thoughts I had out of that. And also, like, I don't know about Owen Kelly's, he could be a tactical genius for all I know. I have absolutely no idea what his management skills would necessarily be like. I don't think that he's been involved in too many other teams, but it was a thought that definitely struck me in the last campaign, the last Ireland campaign, that we were, I think to say we were misfiring doesn't quite capture what was actually a play. Like
the last rugby campaign.
No, football. That we didn't essentially didn't have any strikers. And I had said at the time, I think including on this show, that we should have got Robbie Keane involved at that stage, and not on the basis of bringing him in to talk about tactics or setup or shape or any of that stuff, just to come in and work with the strikers. It's just, I think it's something that maybe teams, maybe rugby does a little bit, but teams probably don't do enough of.
For sure. And also as well, I think this is the perfect time to be bringing a new coach in, because what are we talking? Have we done half the year already when it comes to training? Say they've been back since November. That's 7 months ago. We've done more than half the year, really, even if you take out the April club month as not an inter-county month. Like, things, if they're going to get stale at any point when it comes to training, when it comes to drills or to the management, it's going to have happened by now. Now is the perfect time to do it. This is the time. This is the home stretch. As mad as that seems, this is the home stretch, even though it is the most important part of the competition. It is the shortest stretch that they will have all year, and that new impetus could give them the edge, could give a section of the team the edge, or even just the character that Owen Kelly is. Like, I don't know Owen Kelly, but just seeing him on television, listening to him on the show here sometimes, he seems like a fairly collected guy. He seems like the type of fella that previous Tipperary camps might have used when things started to go into a little bit of disarray. Should have used.
Right.
Could have used, could have done worse things than use Owen Kelly for sure. I think this is a great move.
Yeah. And also, it's not like when I'm talking about bringing Robbie Keane in, it's, you know, the fact that he's not talking about tactics necessarily or any of that sort of stuff. It's like the players have to respect this guy who comes in, who's been there and done it. It's not like, well, who is this schmuck that's coming in to tell us how to do this thing? No matter who I am, I'm like, well, it's Owen Kelly. He's like top scorer of all time.
Yeah, like
talking about.
It's hard to maintain that without outside influences in terms of respecting whatever the setup is, respecting your own position and keeping yourself grounded, especially the success that Tipperary had a couple of years ago, and it looked like they were going to go on to conquer for years. Like, Tipperary have the biggest potential to make the biggest leap this year of all the hurling counties, but also Tipperary have this potential to be one of the biggest underperformers, or we will look back on this Tipperary team as the shoulda, coulda, woulda team. Despite the fact that they are All-Ireland winners, they could have won more, and this is perhaps the sort of thing that will actually tell a lot of the players there, listen, there are more important things in this group of players, there are more important people than you, keep your feet on the ground and play your hurling, because you're an unbelievably talented group of players.
Anything else that you want to touch on the newspapers? The Arsenal game, I don't know if you had any opportunity to see that last night.
Well, eyes glued to Arsenal last night. You know,
really?
Well, 100%.
Okay.
Of course I was. It's the Europa League, the competition that Arsenal are probably going to get beaten in 4-0 next week, just because every time they build your hopes up, they tend to snatch them away. I thought the most emblematic Arsenal moment that happened last night was Alexandre Lacazette. 2 goals scored on a hat-trick in the box, Europa League semi-final. So you'd expect, you scored 2 goals in the Europa League semi-final, you're a pretty good striker. You're continental level at the very worst. Ball in the air, beautiful ball from Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. All there was for Lacazette to head the ball home. And he didn't even head the ball, it just hit his belly. To be fair, there was a defender who ran in front of him and kind of distracted him. But I was like, that kind of sums up what Arsenal have always been.
Yeah,
over the last 10
I know
years.
what you're saying. But I mean, it did happen. The exact same thing happened to Barcelona the other night as well. In added time, they've like a one-on-one. You're like, they're going to score this. There's nothing, no other outcome, and the tie's dead. And they somehow managed to botch it.
Yeah, well, that would be a rather hilarious thing to look back on next week if Liverpool were to do an Istanbul-esque turnaround at Anfield. That Dembele miss.
I don't think we're going to need to worry about that.
No, not really. I think the All-London final it's obviously on course for happening now. Chelsea will be favourites, having taken the away goal, and Arsenal as well. So if Arsenal could pick one era of Chelsea team to play in the Europa League final, it's probably this, because this Chelsea team is the most resembling of an Arsenal team that we've had in recent years, as in they have a huge potential to bottle things as well. Who can bottle it least over the next month really is the $1 million question.
That should be the Europa League. UEFA should send them an email today and say, listen, I've got an idea for
the mascot could be just a bottle.